Hello everyone, this is Ponder on Weather. In this update, we've got several rounds of severe storms followed by a cold blast, including some snow as things start to look interesting heading into next week, as we'll detail things out for you for the next 10 days. So let's take a look at the overall satellite picture. This morning, you can actually see this is Tropical Storm Carl that actually formed in the southern portions of the Gulf of Mexico yesterday. This is not supposed to intensify much. In fact, it's going to head southbound and impact Veracruz in a couple of days. But right now, it's a lot of shear, and it's spreading some of those tropical rains into portions of Florida. You can actually see it's fairly clear out here into the Caribbean. We do have a couple of waves we're watching, but I do feel we're going to be in a kind of a respite pattern for the next week or two. But I'm already beginning to see signs of some things to watch out for as we head into that last week of October here in the Western Caribbean, as things start to come together, and we could be looking at our next storm by then. But to the north, we're going to be dealing with this cold front and some severe storms later on this afternoon. But right now, this morning, into portions of Missouri, back into Iowa, as well as Illinois, they're getting those showers and thunderstorms. But we got a lot of lift to the southern flank of that, and it's all culprit of that jet stream. We can actually see it buckling well out west, and underneath that, it's high and dry with that ridge of high pressure. But in the midsection of the country where it starts to buckle, it's dragging down that colder air, and it's starting to snow this morning in portions of Manitoba and getting into Ontario. But further to the south, we're going to have a lot of concern with some severe activity later on this afternoon, because we've got a lot of lift with this mechanism. You can actually see Carl out here into the Gulf of Mexico, but the winds have turned around from the southwest. That's pulling in that warm air. In fact, it's going to be well into the 90s in a good chunk of Texas. Austin's like 96 degrees today. So, but out ahead of it, we got a lot of water vapor and a lot of energy pulling in from the Gulf of Mexico, and you got that lift. So that's going to set the stage for some severe storms later on this afternoon. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted that slight risk for severe storms, parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, back into Mississippi and Alabama, getting into the Tennessee Valley. Those could be some damaging winds of upwards to over 60 miles an hour, some larger hailstones with it. And you can't rule out an isolated tornado. If we take a look at the overall tornado parameters, they're not significantly high, but it's not like it's zero. So these areas that do have that lift associated with it, the atmosphere does have a little spin. So by the time we get into, say, 4, 5, 6, this is about 7 o'clock this later on early evening, we could be looking at some areas that could in fact be under the gun. That does have a 2% chance of seeing a tornado, so you can't always rule that out. 1 or 2 is possibility in portions of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama today. But as that system will continue to push further off into the east, by the time we get into tomorrow, that sets the stage for another round of severe storms along the East Coast. So now the instability is going to be in portions of Virginia, back into portions of New Jersey, into portions of Delaware, especially into Pennsylvania and upstate New York. Some of those could be on the stronger side, packing those higher wind gusts, and some probably marginal hail associated with it. In fact, let's take a look at the updated understanding, your severe thunderstorm categories. And whenever you see kind of a marginal risk in the green shaded areas, you can say, hey, some of those storms could be capable of some damaging winds and some severe hail. So severe hail is essentially something that might be 1 inch or greater in size. So 1 inch typically implies it could do damage to stuff. Anything less than that typically doesn't do any damage. And you could have that isolated isolated localized tornado threat, but when you see a slight risk for severe storms, that has increased confidence. It has more capability of producing some damaging winds, some severe hail, and there's more capable of producing a possible tornado or two under that slight risk category. But so you can pause it right here and kind of look, because we're going into second season for severe storms for the next I would say 4 to 6 weeks. We could always see some severe storms, and you can't even roll out December a lot of times. You know what happened last year. So it's imperative going forward you understand all these risk parameters, because we will have more storms are going to be in these higher categories, and you need to be prepared well in advance. So let's take a look at the overall wind swath for the next 48 hours from these storms along this cold front. So whenever you see these orange shaded areas, especially the reds, here's the graph on the right hand corner of the screen. We're talking 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts associated with it as this prolongs and moves from west to east over the next couple of days. So we could have some higher wind gusts, especially setting up over portions of the Northeast, you know, as this pushes offshore heading into Thursday afternoon into Thursday evening. But there's your rain prospects over the next 2 days. And if this doesn't tell the story, I don't know what does. I mean, the ridge is locked over the western part. There's not a drop to speak of. It's going to be really dry in Texas as that cold front pushes through, but all the instability is out east. And so that's where the rain's going to be over the next 48 hours. So behind that, we got a cold blast. And this is only the first initial cold blast, followed by the more significant cold blast behind this one. So by the time we get into Friday, your 14th of the month, yeah, we could be looking at some, you know, well below average temperatures setting back over a good chunk of the upper Great Lakes into the into portions of the mid-Atlantic states, heading diving southeast, heading into the Ohio Valley before the rest of the country under that ridge of high pressure. That's where you're going to be finding those, you know, well above average temperature anomalies. So, but underneath that, we could be looking at some snowflakes. Like I mentioned, right now they're getting some snow into Manitoba and to Ontario. So by the time we get into Friday, as this continues to push southbound, yeah, some of those snowflakes could enter the United States in portions of Minnesota, portions of Wisconsin. And I think this just continues to push and dragging down that colder air. And as it drags down that colder air, it'll have a reinforcing shot headed into Sunday. So a lot of the same areas that are going to be colder after this, the initial severe storms, are going to get a reinforcing shot, at least the beginning stages of it, starting into Sunday. And this is by far going to be your coldest temperatures of the season. But a noticeable change out here out west. We do have an upper level low that's going to be on the move. Right now it's setting up over California, but it's going to be on the move, bringing those cooler anomalies out ahead of this cold front. You'll be in the warm sector again in a good chunk of Oklahoma and Texas and parts of Arkansas and Louisiana. So by the time we get into your Sunday afternoon, that upper level low will be over portions of Arizona into New Mexico. That'll have more lift associated with it. It'll open up the Gulf again and bring more water vapor back in the atmosphere. But this time it's slower. When it's slower, it's got a lot more lift, and we got that upper level low out west. That's going to set the stage finally for some rain chances into portions of Oklahoma, into Texas, and getting into Louisiana, while that reinforcing shot of a colder blast is going to be pushing from the north. So on the overall simulated water vapor imagery, by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, that sets up those heavier rain showers into portions of Oklahoma, getting into portions of North Texas, back into Arkansas again, you know, getting into Louisiana, and this will swing across portions of the southeast to the south of there where you got the warm sector. That's where you'll have the instability, and back behind where the cold front is, you'll be kind of high and dry back behind that cold front, especially in the midsection of the country. But by Monday, as I mentioned, it slows down. So when it slows down, that creates more lift and more opportunities for the rain to stick around. It's not just a quick hit this time. It's going to be leaving some nice totals underneath those clouds. And that's something, again, you haven't seen. I know. I mean, you haven't seen rain in a long time. It's been a while, right? Dallas is pushing almost 40 days of no rain to speak of. So this will be a welcome sight, and finally a pattern change where most of you have been begging for on this channel. I get it. So Oklahoma and Texas, you're going to finally see some rain. And then even New Orleans, I mean, even them, they've been getting a 24 days dry spell. So that's, not very common for them. So because they've been usually getting some rain showers every couple of days, but finally rain does move back in the picture as we get into Sunday into Monday timeframe. But there's the cold blast as we head into next week. And this is, again, the coldest temperatures of the season so far by the time we get into the middle of the month. with well below average temperatures really locked over the eastern, central, and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. Texas finally gets cooler, starting to feel a little bit more like fall. But out west, again, sorry guys, you're still going to have to hang out a little bit longer. That ridge is still locked over you guys for those well above average temperature anomalies. But underneath that, we could have some snow flying, and these are snow flurries that could actually enter portions of the upper Great Lakes and parts of the mid-Atlantic. Portions of Pennsylvania, portions of the upstate New York could be seeing some snow flurries fly by then, by the time we get into your Tuesday, October the 18th. And then, you know, as this moves across and continues to drag down that colder air, let's talk temperatures. So let's head into next week as that initial blast will come in. All those areas in blue, there's your graph on the right-hand corner of the screen of the actual temperatures. We're talking widespread 20s, if not teens, for a good chunk of the midsection of the country, even the 30s pushing as far south into Kansas, as well as Missouri and parts of the Ohio Valley. But it just even gets colder by the time we get into Tuesday, as that cold air, pretty much the entire state of Missouri is going to be waking up with below freezing temperatures by then. All of Illinois, all of Indiana, pretty much all of Kentucky as well as below freezing. So there's 37 degrees in Oklahoma. That's definitely the coldest temperatures you've seen, and even 45 in Dallas. So that's definitely the coldest temperatures. And those are actual, you know, big city temperatures. So if you live in the outlying areas, you're probably talking upper 30s up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? So even the 30s will swing as far south as Arkansas and Mississippi and Alabama. So we'll have frost advisories by then, and it just gets even colder by the time we get into Wednesday. So by the time we get into Wednesday, there's the freeze line actually entering Mississippi. We're talking freezing temperatures in Mississippi, folks. Yeah, that's an initial cold blast for the middle of October by then. So you're going to really feel it by far by the time we get into next week. So as we get into Thursday, by the time we get into Thursday, that cold air finally starts to modify by then. It's still chilly, but not nearly as cold. You can actually see the ridge of high pressure will finally be on the move out west and setting up over the central U.S. So you've been predominantly well below average for a good chunk of October. So by the time we get into, say, the 20th of the month, yeah, you're finally going to start to feel those above average temperatures in the Northeast coming back in by then. But all that means is you guys out west will finally start to experience the cooler conditions, because we look at the overall ensemble guidance by the time we get after the 20th of the month. This is, if you watch my October outlook, we talked about this. After the 20th of the month, I felt pretty confident we're going to be having a pattern change in the Pacific Northwest, and that's still showing up in the cards with that ridge building over the top. Hey, we got that colder anomalies, more unsettled conditions finally coming back. You've been high and dry for several months now, right? So underneath that is a welcome sight to see if you live up there, right? I mean, it's been 3 months since a lot of you guys have experienced some cooler conditions, some rainier conditions. I think finally the atmospheric river will come back into play into Washington and Oregon, you know, parts of Nevada and Idaho. That's a welcome sight to see if you live out west, because any rain is going to be really welcome, because it's been a long time, right? So over the next 10 days, let's highlight where the instability will be. So where that upper level low is, as this swings across from west to east, we could be looking at some heavier rains, especially further you get into the central U.S. There's Texas with a good chance of rain over the next 7 to 10 days, especially as you get into Sunday, Monday timeframe. Oklahoma gets in the action, Arkansas, Louisiana, but especially out east. I showed you all the rain for the next 48 hours. But finally, the rain does come back for the Pacific Northwest. Most of this won't start until after the 20th, and I think it just even amplifies after that. So here's your snow prospects over the next 10 days as well. So most of the snow is going to be well up into Canada, but it's going to be putting a good blanket of snow in Alaska and much of Siberia. that'll funnel and keep the colder temperatures and keep the push further south. But yeah, you can't roll out a dusting or two. Higher amounts in Manitoba, Ontario, getting back into Quebec, but further south, at least for the states are concerned, we could be looking at a dusting or two in the portions of Minnesota, the upper Great Lakes, and portions of the upper portions of the mid-Atlantic states, and portions of New England as we head with that colder blast. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you for and